Chapter 20. The narrow, dank stairwell stank of stale alcohol and stagnant air. Samantha felt as if she were descending into a worm-filled hole in the ground. Her beaded dress, already dusty from the long walk from Overlook Valley, brushed against the dingy walls. At the bottom of the stairs was a heavy, scarred wooden door. Samantha took a resolute breath and put her hand to it to push it open. It was slightly sticky. The cellar door. Ugh. Samantha passed through the doorway into a hall lit by a single dim bulb. At the end was a second door, behind which she could hear the raucous, drunken voices of the cellar door's patrons. The entrance to the speakeasy was guarded by an extra-large man who would have looked right at home as a linebacker for the Detroit Panthers. His arms were crossed over a huge chest that strained his jacket. Samantha's heels clicked against the gritty floor, her breath coming fast and nervous as she made her way toward him. "Yeah," he said, the single syllable ringing in the sour air like a challenge. "I'm looking for Kevin Hughes," Samantha said.
"Kevin?" the big guy repeated. "This here is a private club, you know."
Samantha gave a shiver of disgust as he looked her up and down.
"But I bet Kevin wouldn't mind having a classy dame like you as his guest."
He pulled a key from his jacket. Samantha forced a tight smile as the guard unlocked the second door and let her into Kevin's lair. A few dozen men sat in the dingy booths and along the bar. Heads turned toward her.
"Well, a dame,"
announced a raspberry-nosed man slumped at the bar.
"A gorgeous dame."
Samantha ignored him, her eyes making a sweep of the room. It wasn't hard to spot Kevin Hughes immediately. Sitting at a back booth, he was surrounded by fellows, one bringing him a drink, another lighting his cigarette, several more hanging on his every word. His new cash and flash had clearly made him a celebrity around his old haunt. Celebrity in the cellar door. That was one kind of fame Samantha could live without. She wanted to turn right around and race home. Instead, she set a course toward Kevin. "Remember, you're an actress," she told herself. She held her head high, gliding gracefully as if making her way across the most elegant ballroom. She felt all eyes following her. "Kevin, darling," Samantha sang out as she approached his booth, trying to make it sound as if he were a desirable leading man. Kevin's face lit up. Then he seemed to reconsider. His smile curled into a wounded pout.
"If you're looking for Rudolph Valentino, he just left."
"Ah, Kevin, don't be sore," Samantha said. She rolled her hips as she approached his table. One of his friends let out a low whistle through his teeth. Samantha felt a shudder of revulsion go through her, but she didn't let it show.
"Last time I saw you, you told me to grow up," Kevin said.
"Last time I was wrong. We all make mistakes. Remember? That's what you told me." Kevin arched an eyebrow. "You said you wanted to give me another chance. And, well, I've decided that all those other boys are just big bores. You live so much faster than they do." Samantha made her voice go breathy.
"You got it, sister," Kevin said.
"So, aren't you going to invite me to sit down?" Samantha gave him her most bewitching look. Kevin was still wary.
"Why? So you can give me the hi-hat routine again?"
"Kevin, do you think I'm going to snub you after searching half of Detroit to find you?"
"Well, okay, you guys scram. Let the dame and me have some room to breathe."
Kevin's boys moved to a different part of the speakeasy, and Samantha slid into the booth up close to Kevin.
"You look great today, Sam," he said.
At least her fancy outfit wasn't a total waste, Samantha thought. "Thanks," she said. "Swell ring." She touched the jewel-encrusted band around one of Kevin's fingers and let her hand graze his.
"Yeah, ain't it?"
There was a swagger in Kevin's voice. He took a gulp of his drink.
Want one?
Samantha forced herself to lean in toward Kevin so her arm was touching his. A drink or a ring? She asked with a throaty laugh.
Let's start with a drink, doll.
Kevin's cheeks flushed. Was he blushing, or was it the liquor? No matter, Samantha thought. Either one might soften him up enough for her purposes. Thanks, Kevin, but I think I'll just keep you company while you have yours, she replied. She watched him put it away as if it were soda pop. Then she offered to get up and get him another.
That's what I like, a dame who waits on you, Kevin said, his words beginning to slur.
Samantha made her way to the bar, attracting attention from Kevin's fellow drinkers. Her skin crawled. What a low-down crowd. Still, the catcalls and unabashed stares would probably make Kevin feel like a big man for sharing his table with her. She did her best to flatter him as he drained his new drink. When she came back with yet another one, Samantha let him sling his arm around her.
I've missed you, he said drunkenly.
Samantha looked into his bloodshot eyes. It has been a while, hasn't it? Maybe we can start making up for lost time. Kevin pulled her more tightly against him.
Yeah? What'd you have in mind?
Samantha fought the temptation to move away. You could take me out again. We could go see a motion picture at the Bijou.
Yeah?
Kevin gave a leering grin.
Just like that?
Well, there is one little tiny favor you can do for me, Samantha said.
Oh.
Kevin seemed to sober up immediately.
So this is why you came in here talking sweet.
He took his arm away from her. It's almost nothing, Samantha said quickly. In fact, it's as much a favor to yourself.
Oh, yeah?
Kevin gave her a sidelong glance. Yeah, she said. See, the way I've been hearing it, a lot of people are talking about you. Kevin seemed to puff up his chest like a blowfish.
Is that right? He said proudly.
Sure, Samantha said. New clothes, new style, new man. She made her voice rich with admiration. Kevin took a self-assured swig of liquor. Of course, there's a dangerous side to all the attention, Samantha added. Kevin banged his glass down on the table.
There is?
Well, people are also talking about where all your cash is coming from, she said. Word gets around fast. Kevin gave a drunken grin.
Money talks.
Kevin, did it ever occur to you that maybe it talks too much? Samantha asked. The grin stayed plastered to Kevin's alcohol-flushed face. He didn't seem to get the point. What you're doing is illegal, Samantha said.
Hey, thanks for telling me. Kevin laughed noisily.
Samantha held in a sigh of exasperation. Kevin, aren't you afraid that somebody's going to say something to the wrong person one day? The dumb grin slipped off Kevin's face. Samantha could see that she had finally gotten an idea through his thick skull.
Are you saying the feds are on my tail? Kevin asked.
His voice was suddenly shaky. I've heard talk about it, Samantha lied. That's why I thought you might like this idea I have. Kevin took another long swig of his drink.
I'm all ears.
She told Kevin what she had in mind, step by sly step. Was he drunk enough to agree to it yet? Each sip he took seemed to bring her closer to getting even with Amanda and Ted. Kevin listened closely and nodded.
Smart dame, he said.
Samantha felt a spark of satisfaction.
But I don't know if I want to part with a whole night's work,
Kevin said. The spark went out. Kevin, it's as much for you as for me, Samantha said. She slid closer to Kevin, as close as she dared.
You're talking about a lot of liquor, he said. I hate to pour out all the profits. Even for you, pretty lady, he added, bringing his face only inches away from hers.
Samantha resisted the urge to pull back. She could see her plan melting away like the ice in Kevin's drink. She let her hand rest on his shoulder. Not for me, for you, she whispered. You don't want to go to jail, do you? Kevin rested a hand on top of hers and stroked her fingers. No fancy suits, no boys to run your errands, no me, Samantha added. She tried to sound sultry, but she knew there was a note of desperation in her voice.
And if I say no, Kevin asked, I bet I can forget about seeing you around anymore.
Samantha played her riskiest card. It's all right, Kevin. I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. I'll still be here for you.
Yeah? Kevin asked.
He put his arms around her and pulled her toward him. Samantha steeled herself as Kevin's liquor-moistened lips pressed against hers. Yeah, Samantha whispered when he pulled away. Luckily, Kevin was too drunk to notice her shudder of disgust. She let him kiss her again. I just think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Think about it. Kevin nodded slowly.
I suppose you're right.
Samantha felt a breeze of relief in the smoky speakeasy. I knew I could count on you, she said. She hates me. Samantha's tears wet the front of Ted's shirt. We've never had a secret from each other in our whole lives before. It's all my fault. The icy hatred in Samantha's eyes burned in her memory. Her twin had come home, glared at her wordlessly, and locked herself in the bathroom. Her mother and father had traded looks that didn't need an explanation. Poor Sam, their faces said. It was clear Ted had made a different choice than they'd expected. Amanda felt like the sneakiest, worst sister in the whole world. No amount of coaxing would bring Samantha out to talk.
Just let her be, Ted advised.
He stroked Amanda's hair and tried to soothe away her tears as they sat together on the living room sofa.
There's no sense trying to reason with her when the anger is so fresh.
I wanted to tell her about us before, but I couldn't stand to hurt her. I know you wanted the same thing, and I know I was wrong to let you think I'd explained everything to my family. But I didn't know you were coming back so soon, and I thought I'd still have time. Oh, Ted, I didn't want to hurt anyone, and that's exactly what I've done.
Shh, Amanda, shh, Ted whispered. Don't blame yourself. It's partly my fault, too. Maybe I should have written to your parents. As for Sam, well, she needs time to calm down. Just let her be by herself for a while. And you need to relax, too. Maybe Earl's music at the cafe car will help.
Amanda shook her head, gulping back a fresh stream of tears. How can I go out and have fun when Samantha's so unhappy?
Amanda, what good is it going to do to stay here and make yourself miserable? Samantha's not ready to talk, and you can't push her. Let her sleep on it. Things have a way of looking brighter in the morning.
Amanda shrugged out of Ted's warm arms. Just let me try once more. She went down the hall and knocked on the bathroom door. Sam, she said timidly. Sam's answer was like machine gun fire. Why don't you just leave me alone? Take your stupid boyfriend and get out of here. Amanda swallowed hard. Sam, please come out and talk to me. I never meant to hurt you. I'd rather talk to a python, Samantha said. Tears stung Amanda's throat. She hung her head and stood helplessly outside the bathroom door for a few moments. Then she turned and went back to the living room, her steps heavy with sadness. Ted's strong, caring hug helped a little.
She can't stay mad at you forever, he reassured her. You just have to give her time.
Amanda buried her face against Ted's chest.
Come on, Amanda. What do you say we go out? Try to get your mind off this.
Amanda sighed. I think that's exactly what Sam wants, to get rid of us.
Does that mean yes? Ted asked gently. We might even have some fun, you know.
Amanda looked up into Ted's loving face. She felt a flame of love and warmth inside, drying her tears. You're right, she said. Just let me do one thing before we go. She ran upstairs to her roll-top desk and took out her poetry notebook. She flipped through it until she came to the poem called Part of Me, what she'd written about her and Samantha. Carefully, she tore it loose from the sewn binding. In capital letters on the top of the page, she printed, I love you, Sam. She left the poem on Samantha's bed. Chapter 21. In the dark bedroom, Samantha listened to Amanda's slow, even breathing. Thank goodness her twin was asleep. She had come home just at the stroke of midnight, the twins' weekend curfew, but she and Ted had stayed down in the living room so late Samantha had started to worry that her twin would never come to bed. Finally, Samantha had heard her washing up, humming away, all lovey-dovey and dreamy. Samantha had opened one eye just long enough to see Amanda float into the bedroom, a look of bliss on her face. Her happy expression had disappeared as her gaze had come to rest on Samantha. Samantha had shut her eyes and pretended to be asleep, but she had heard Amanda picking up that dumb, mushy poem Samantha had crumpled up and left in the middle of the floor, heard her smooth the paper out, and began to cry softly. Good. Let Amanda feel horrible that she had deceived the person she was supposed to be closest to in the whole world. Let her feel miserable that she was a double-crossing fink. Maybe once she paid the price for it, Samantha would be more willing to forgive her. Now Samantha peered over at her to make sure Amanda was asleep. She called her name softly to be extra certain. Once, twice, no response. Excellent. Samantha tiptoed out of bed and over to the chair where Amanda had draped the outfit she had worn for her night out with Ted. Silently, Samantha slithered into the peach silk dress and draped herself with the ropes of pearls. She pulled on one of Amanda's silk stockings, then slipped a foot into the other. Darn, double darn! She felt her finger go right through the second stocking, the hole spreading out into a long, obvious run. She took the stockings off and threw them back on the chair. Moving as silently as she could, she rummaged around in her drawer for another pair. She did her best to find the same color, but the closest she could come was several shades darker. She hoped Ted wouldn't notice. In the closet, she found the shoes Amanda had been wearing. She carried them out of the room, giving a backward glance at her sister. Sweet dreams, she whispered. They may have to last you for quite a while. Holding Amanda's shoes, she padded down the hall in her stocking feet to the guest room. She pushed the door open quietly. Ted was asleep, a beam of moonlight bathing his face. Samantha went over and put a hand on his cheek. Ted, she whispered. As her fingers touched the warmth of his skin, she felt a tiny flicker of the old feelings inside her. Ted might be a fink, but he certainly was handsome. Ted, wake up, she said, letting her voice rise and fall in her sister's sweet, soft cadences. Ted's eyes opened. Amanda? He looked up at Samantha with a sleepy smile. You're still dressed. Haven't you gone to sleep yet? Samantha leaned down toward him without answering. Their lips met in a long, passionate kiss. Samantha could feel Ted's heart beating against her chest as he pulled her close. His breath was one with hers. She couldn't resist. She gave in to what she had wanted for so long. Ted murmured drowsily. I know it's not proper for you to be in here, but I love it. I love you. Samantha drank in another kiss. Just one more, she told herself. You can't forget what you're doing here. But Ted's kisses felt so good she couldn't bring herself to pull away. Amanda, he whispered in her ear. That brought Samantha down to earth. She drew back. Ted, listen. Someone just came by from the cafe car, Samantha said. Came here? Ted asked. He gave her a sleepy kiss on the forehead. Samantha nodded. Earl sent for you. Something's up. Ted pulled back. Suddenly he looked wide awake. Earl? What's wrong? Samantha shrugged. I don't know, but the boy he sent said to come right away. Ted swung himself out of bed, his bare legs sticking out from underneath his long nightshirt. Say, Amanda, how did they find me here? He asked, his worry tinged with confusion. Samantha gulped. She hadn't quite thought of everything. There must have been someone at the club tonight who saw us together and knew where I lived. Ted knitted his brows. I don't remember you saying hello to anyone. There was someone I recognized from school. We, sort of nodded to each other. Samantha improvised. Ted nodded. Well, we'll find out soon enough. If Earl needs me, he can count on me. Of course he can. I'll come with you. Why don't you get dressed and I'll meet you downstairs? All right, I'll be right down, Ted said. As Samantha left the room, she allowed herself a satisfied smile. So far, so good.
"Whoa, what's going on here?"
Ted asked as the coupe neared the club. The area around the entrance was barricaded off, and the headlights of several cars flooded the scene with light. A noisy crowd was gathering. "It's the police," Samantha said. Amanda would never use a word like feds.
"I hope Earl's not in trouble," Ted said.
He steered the car right up to the barricades. They were immediately approached by two burly men in dark suits.
"Miss Amanda Watson?"
the heavy-set, red-faced one asked. "Yes, that's me," Samantha said. She could feel her heart beating nervously. This was her biggest role ever. She had to play it to the hilt.
"Argent Sampson," the man said, flashing a badge. "Perhaps you'd like to step out of the auto."
Samantha could see Ted stiffen.
"Is there a problem, sir?" he asked. "Not for this young lady," Agent Sampson replied.
Sampson let him help her out of the car.
"I'd just like to thank her for doing her duty and bringing you to us." "Me? To you?"
Ted's handsome face was a mask of confusion.
"Amanda, I thought Earl sent for me."
Samantha let the G-man answer for her.
"As for you, pal, we hear you've been financing your college tuition with some illegal money, if you know what I mean."
Ted's brow furrowed.
"Excuse me?" "I think you heard me the first time," Agent Sampson said. "You know what's in this car as well as we do."
Ted shook his head.
"I do? I'm in this car, sir, is that what you mean?" "Oh, a wise guy,"
the agent's partner said, swaggering over to the car. He was even bigger and more intimidating than Agent Sampson.
"Okay, get him out of there."
He made a motion with his hand, and two more agents stepped forward and roughly pulled Ted from the coupe.
"I don't understand," Ted said helplessly. "What's going on?"
He looked at Samantha.
"What does this have to do with Miss Watson? If you do anything to hurt her—"
Samantha's big moment had arrived. She blinked fast and hard, calling up several fat tears. "The only person who's hurt me is you," she said in her shakiest voice. Ted's face crinkled up with hurt and bewilderment.
"Me? What are you talking about? Amanda, why are you crying? I don't understand what's going on here."
He looked from Samantha to the federal agents, then back to Samantha again.
"Maybe she's crying because her boyfriend turned out to be a crook," Agent Sampson said.
Ted looked as if someone had slapped him.
"A crook?" "Yeah. Now how's about you open up the trunk for us so we can take a look at what you got in there?"
Ted looked thoroughly bewildered, but he did as he was told. Samantha watched as the headlights from one of the agent's cars caught the sparkle of dozens upon dozens of glass bottles in the coupe's trunk. Ted let out a loud gasp.
"Right, and innocent. Sure, Buster. Next you're going to tell us you didn't know it was a crime to be transporting intoxicating drink."
Agent Sampson turned to Samantha.
"Thanks for making us wise to this guy."
"What?" Ted looked at Samantha, his eyes wide with astonishment. "You knew what was in my trunk? You told them that I had—" His words trailed off in disbelief as he gestured at the contents of his car.
"But what about Earl?"
Samantha made a show of bravely sniffing back her tears. "This isn't about Earl, Ted. It's about you running bootleg liquor." Ted's face contorted with hurt.
"Amanda, you don't think I really put the stuff in here, do you? Why didn't you say something to me? I would have told you I didn't know a thing about it."
"And you'd expect me to believe you? The same fellow who took my sister up to Overlook Valley and— oh, I can barely say it— tried to seduce her? Oh, Ted, I thought you loved me." Shock was written all over Ted's face.
"No, Amanda, no, you've got it all wrong."
"I do?" Samantha let her tears flow fast and strong. "My twin has never lied to me, Ted Wakefield, which is more than I can say for you. And to think how I felt about you."
"Amanda, I didn't try to seduce Samantha. I swear to you."
Ted reached out toward her. "This is madness." One of the agents grabbed Ted's wrists and handcuffed them behind his back.
"Sir, there's been a mistake. I'm not the man you want," Ted protested. "Sure, pal, that's what they all say."
He turned Ted over to Agent Sampson, who dragged Ted toward a waiting car.
"Amanda," Ted said. "Amanda, believe me. I never made a move for your sister, and I didn't put the bottles in my car." Agent Sampson pulled Ted forward. Sure you didn't. They just walked in there by themselves. Please, sir, Ted said. Somebody else must have planted those. Suddenly Ted whipped around toward Samantha with such force that the agent momentarily lost his grasp on him. But Ted didn't break away. He stood rooted to the spot, staring at Samantha. No, Amanda, it couldn't have been you. Could it? Did you do this because you thought I had made a play for your sister? Samantha held his gaze in silence. She watched Ted's hurt and confusion turn to fury. His mouth set into a tight, tense line. His hands clenched up. There was ice in his eyes where not too long before there had been fire. I don't believe this. You can't be the girl I fell in love with, he said. Come on, big fellow, Agent Sampson was saying. We've been looking for the guy who's been supplying these parts for quite some time. Good heavens, Amanda, you can't just let them take me away like this, Ted said over his shoulder. You know I'm innocent. Agent Sampson pushed Ted into one of the unmarked cars. Ted gave Samantha one last look full of astonishment and grief and fury. I thought I loved you, but I was wrong. Maybe I should have gone for Samantha after all. Samantha nodded solemnly and whispered under her breath, Yes, Todd, maybe you should have. She watched the FBI men drive away with Ted. The score was settled. Amanda had taken Ted away from her. Now she had taken Ted away from Amanda. They were even. It was over. Ted Wakefield was out of their lives for good. Chapter 22. Amanda waited. She stood at the bedroom window, holding back the curtain and peering out at the empty street. The house was silent. Her parents were out visiting friends, and Samantha had left for her play rehearsal before Amanda had woken up. Amanda swallowed hard. It was as if her twin couldn't bear even to be in the same room with her. And Ted? His bag was still in the guest room. His bed slept in an unmade, but he was nowhere to be found. His car was gone, too. At first, Amanda told herself he had just gone out for a drive. It was a good day for it. The sun was shining and the air was sweet with spring. Or perhaps he had had an idea for a story and he was chasing down a lead. Writers got like that sometimes, didn't they? They had an idea and they just threw themselves into it. Amanda told herself that Ted would be back soon, but it was strange that he hadn't left so much as a note for her. She tried to distract herself with various chores. She straightened up the room, putting away the clothing she had worn the night before. Funny that she hadn't noticed the huge rip in one stocking when she was taking it off. She threw the stockings into the back of her drawer, making a mental note to bring them down to the rag bag later. Then she tackled her mathematics problems for school. Afterward, she tried to write some poetry, but by this time her words were frozen with worry. Where was Ted? She put her poetry notebook away and stationed herself at the window again. She felt like Elsie DeKecko, waiting for her boyfriend to come home from the war. How silly, she told herself. Ted's just out for a little while. But the sky was now bright with the midday sun. Ted had been gone more than a little while. It didn't make sense to Amanda. The night before, even sleep had been a painful separation for her and Ted. They had lingered over their good nights with kiss after kiss, each one deeper and more passionate than the next. I almost can't bear to wait until morning, Ted had whispered in Amanda's ear. What if something had happened to him? What if he'd gotten lost, had an accident? Why had he even gone out in the first place if he'd been so eager to see Amanda as soon as he woke up? Amanda worried and waited. Amanda watched her parents come up the walk. From her bedroom window, she could just make out the grim looks on their faces. There was no mistaking their expressions. They had bad news. Amanda felt a cold shiver go through her. Had her parents found out something about Ted? She raced downstairs, her heart beating out of control. She met them at the door. It's about Ted, isn't it? Her father nodded, his brow furrowed. Maybe you'd better sit down, Amanda. Amanda had visions of the coupe overturned by the side of some road, Ted's lifeless body covered with a sheet. Tell me, she yelled. Please, just tell me right now.
It couldn't be any worse than what she was imagining.
It's in the late edition of the paper. I think you'd better prepare yourself.
Mr. Watson held out the folded newspaper.
4th page.
Amanda nearly ripped the paper from his hand. She shook as she rifled through the pages. The headline blared out at her. Chicago youth arrested for transporting bootleg liquor. It read. Ted, Amanda gasped. But that's impossible. We're shocked too, Amanda, her mother said. I don't know what to think. According to the paper, he was found with a trunk full of bottles in front of some club called the Cafe Car. The Cafe Car? That's where he went last night. I was with him. We went and heard his friend Earl play. Then we came home. There wasn't a bit of trouble. Quickly, Amanda skimmed the newspaper article for details. 4 a.m., but we were asleep. She kept reading. Then she came to the biggest shock of all. He was accompanied by a beautiful blonde in a pink dress. Why, that almost sounds as if it could be me. The dress I had on was peach-colored, but I didn't. Heavens no, it can't be the right Ted Wakefield. She heard her words coming out in a rush of disbelief.
Amanda, her father enveloped her in a strong hug. Darling, I know how terrible this must be for you.
Amanda buried her head in the soft flannel of her father's jacket. It couldn't be. It mustn't be. Her beloved Ted a criminal? Her beloved Ted sneaking around in the dead of night with bottles of moonshine and another girl? She remembered Harry's words the first night she had met Ted.
That's Ted for you. Polite, well-mannered, smart, and then you find out he knows every night spot in town.
She put that together with Ted's story about his grandfather Wakefield and how the family money had begun to run out. Could Ted be desperate enough to try making it back in a way he hadn't told Amanda about? And what of this other girl? Amanda thought about the kisses she and Ted had shared. She thought about his beautiful words and the deep openness in his eyes. Another girl? There had to be some explanation that wasn't in the newspaper. Father, Mother, I've got to go see him. I've got to hear Ted's story in person, she said.
Amanda, he must be in a holding cell at some police station, Mr. Watson said, or in jail.
Amanda freed herself from his arms. I don't care. I have to talk to him. Ted is a good person, the best person. There must be something we don't know. He took the newspaper out of Amanda's hands.
Amanda, it's always hard to admit we've misjudged somebody, and I know how you feel about Ted.
Don't say it, Amanda cried. Don't say but. I won't listen to you condemn Ted when he hasn't had a chance to tell his side of the story. She heard the loud, angry way her words came out, and suddenly she felt ashamed. She had never talked to her father this way before. I'm sorry, she said more softly. He cupped a hand under her chin.
Amanda, look at me. I know people make mistakes about other people. It's only human.
Father, I haven't made a mistake, Amanda said. Mrs. Watson put a hand on Amanda's shoulder.
Sometimes, dear, it's hard to know, she said. There was a faraway note in her voice. I made a mistake once, a big mistake. I almost ended up with the wrong man.
Mother, Ted's not the wrong man, Amanda said. And even if you're right, don't you think I should be able to find out for myself? She argued. Her parents exchanged looks.
I can't say I approve of my daughter running around from police station to police station, chasing after someone who might be a bootlegger, her father said.
Father, all that's going to happen is that I'll find out the truth, Amanda said. Please, she added.
Taylor, she's right. Goodness knows, I ran off a long way farther than the local police station when I was Amanda's age, and she needs to find out the truth. It's the only way.
Amanda flashed her mother a grateful look.
Her father sighed. Well, all right, go if you must. I always thought your sister was more like your mother than you are, but now I see that you have an impetuous streak too. Go on.
Thank you, Father. Amanda stood on tiptoe and gave him a kiss on the cheek.
Good luck, Amanda.
Amanda turned on her heel and headed for the door. She had told her parents she was going to find out the truth. Would it be something she really wanted to hear? It was dark. Amanda's legs ached from walking from one neighborhood to the next, hopping one streetcar after another. She had cried herself out, and now she felt numb and exhausted. She climbed the steps to another police station, pulled open the heavy metal door, and approached the high wooden front desk. Timidly, tiredly, she asked the officer on duty the same question she had been asking all afternoon.
"Wakefield?"
the wiry red-haired officer asked. Amanda was getting to know this procedure by heart. Next, she said, 19 years old, tall, dark-haired, handsome. The police officer shrugged.
"I don't know. We get all sorts in here. Let me look in the record. WWW."
Amanda anticipated the shake of his head. Instead, the routine changed.
"Ah, Wakefield Theodore," the officer said.
"He's here?" Amanda felt herself become alert instantly. The policeman ran his finger across the line of blue ink in his ledger. Amanda felt her spirits sink again as he shook his head.
"Was here. The feds told us to let him out. Couldn't make the charges stick. Left this morning."
Amanda felt a peculiar mix of relief and despair. They couldn't make the charges stick. That meant Ted was probably innocent. Oh, she knew he was, but it also meant she had no way of finding him.
"Hey, Joe," the policeman yelled to another officer, seated at a desk in the room behind him. "You were here when they released this Wakefield kid, weren't you?" He turned back to Amanda. "Maybe Officer Johnstone knows something."
Officer Johnstone lumbered over to the front desk. He was a big, older man with a long nose and a shock of white hair.
"Yeah, we had him in the holding pen overnight. Kept insisting he was innocent. Said some dame set him up."
Officer Johnstone peered at Amanda.
"You're not the gal he was talking about, are you, miss?"
Amanda thought about the newspaper reports of the girl in the pink dress. She shook her head miserably.
"The guy said his heart was broken," Officer Johnstone went on. "Said if he was wrong about the girl he loved, he was wrong about everything."
The girl he loved? Amanda felt like a tornado was whirling inside her. Did that mean her or the mysterious blonde in pink? Ted had told her he loved her, but if he had lied about how he was paying for college, maybe he had lied about that too. Less than 24 hours earlier, Amanda had been so sure of Ted's feelings and her own. Now she didn't know what to believe. "So you don't know where I might be able to find him?" Amanda asked, feeling hopeless. Both officers shook their heads. Officer Johnstone ran a hand through his white hair. "I'm sorry, miss." "Watson," Amanda supplied. "Amanda Watson." Officer Johnstone's bushy white eyebrows knitted together immediately.
"I thought you said you weren't the girl he was talking about."
Amanda shook her head. "I'm not." Officer Johnstone was giving her a funny look.
"But that was her name. Amanda. I'm sure of it." He kept repeating it as if he couldn't believe what she had done, or what you had done, he said, more than a hint of suspicion in his voice. "You know, dragging the law into a lover's quarrel is a very serious matter, young lady," the front desk officer added gravely.
Amanda's head was spinning. I'm not the girl he meant," she said weakly. Her legs felt so shaky she thought she might fall down. "But I think I know who is."
"Miss, are you all right?" Officer Johnstone asked. "You're looking pale."
Amanda most decidedly did not feel all right. In fact, she felt thoroughly sick at the ugliness of the thought forming in her mind. But it would explain everything. Goodness knows it wouldn't have been the first time Samantha had pretended to be her. She'd even gotten away with fooling their parents a few times. The last time had been when Samantha had stayed out past curfew on a date, and their father had punished her, saying no nights out for a week. The very next night, she had pretended to be Amanda and had gone out with the same fellow again, that horrible Kevin Hughes, the one who was still so stuck on Samantha, the one they said was running bootlegged, heavens, bootlegged liquor, just like what Ted was arrested for. The picture kept getting clearer and more monstrous. Amanda felt as if she were living a nightmare. Samantha, her identical twin, her best friend in the whole world, had framed the boy she loved, and she had somehow made him think Amanda was responsible. It was war. Amanda stormed up the staircase and into the bedroom. Samantha was seated at the vanity, trying on a new shade of lipstick. She eyed Amanda warily in the mirror. Amanda slammed the bedroom door and marched across the room. She grabbed the lipstick right out of Samantha's hand. SNAKE, she wrote in thick, blood-red letters on the mirror. "Amanda, what in the world are you doing?" Samantha yelled. "That's a brand new tube of lipstick." Amanda took the lipstick and smashed it against the mirror. The finger of soft, waxy red squashed into a shapeless blob. "That cost me 5 whole cents at F.W. Woolworth's," Samantha said. "You owe me, Amanda." "I owe you?" Amanda barely recognized her own hard voice. "And what about what you owe me?" Samantha spun around on the vanity bench. "Amanda, what are you talking about? I'm the one who's angry with you. You're the snake, not me." Amanda took her twin by the shoulders and shook her. "Snake? Double snake? You know very well what I'm talking about." Samantha shrugged out of her grasp. "Ow, you're hurting me. What in the world is going on?" She put on her most innocent voice. "This is about Ted, and you know it," Amanda said. As she pronounced his name, she felt a new surge of fury against her twin. "Oh, him," Samantha said. "Mother and Father told me." "Not that you didn't already know," Amanda said, her voice just barely under control. Samantha scowled. "Amanda, I don't know what you're trying to say or what kind of game you're playing. Losing the boy I love is no game, at least to me it's not." "Amanda, I'm sure finding out about Ted was a shock, but look at it this way. It's good riddance to bad rubbish." Amanda felt her whole body trembling. "Ted Wakefield is not bad rubbish." Samantha arched an eyebrow. "That's not what the newspapers said." "And the girl in pink? What does the mysterious girl in pink say?" Amanda had never dreamed she could feel such hatred toward her own twin. How could Samantha have done this? Samantha held her ground. "I don't know what you're talking about, Amanda." Amanda yanked open her drawer and pulled out one pale silk stocking. "Sam, while I was up here waiting for Ted, I had lots of time to put away my clothing from last night. And guess what I discovered?" "A stocking, I see," Samantha said. "But I don't understand what that has to do with Ted. Why are you acting so batty? Ruining my lipstick, talking about some curl in pink. Samantha, this stocking has a run in it," Amanda said. Samantha turned her face away from Amanda. "Gee, that's too bad," she said. "Those darn things run awfully easily, don't they?" "It didn't have a run in it when I took it off," Amanda continued. "Maybe you just didn't see it." "I don't think so. But if someone else put it on after I took it off, it could have ripped then, right?" Amanda asked pointedly. "Amanda, what is all this fuss about stockings? You're acting positively goofy." "I think you know," Amanda said. "I think that the person who put on my stockings probably also put on my dress. Pink isn't too far from peach. It would be easy to get the two colors mixed up, wouldn't it?" Samantha was silent. "Admit it," Amanda said. "You were so jealous of me and Ted that you planned this whole horrible thing." Samantha got up. "Amanda, maybe you've forgotten, but as of yesterday, I'm not even talking to you." She went over to the window and stared outside, her back to Amanda. Amanda followed her. "Oh, no, you don't. You're not going to get out of telling me the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I seem to remember you reminding me, not too long ago, that we didn't keep secrets from each other." Samantha whirled around, her jaw set. "And who was the first to turn into a lying sneak?" "I didn't lie," Amanda said. "I just couldn't find the right time to tell you. I couldn't bear to make you unhappy. Now I see that you have no trouble doing that to me. And my God, think about what you've done to Ted. You may have ruined his life." "Me?" Amanda could feel her fury spiraling like a whirlwind. "I'm not as blind as you seem to think." "Well, golly," Samantha said with big surprise. "That's exactly how I felt when you were carrying on your lovesick letter writing with Ted. What do you think of that?" Amanda gasped. "You knew about the letters?" "Dear Amanda," Samantha quoted in an overly gooey voice, "your letters are exquisite agony." She made a face. "Exquisite agony? Who does the fellow think he is? William Shakespeare?" Amanda felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "You read them." Hearing Ted's words drove home the pain of what had happened. "Every one of them. I found them under your mattress. And how do you think they made me feel?" "I don't even have to guess," Amanda told her twin. Any sympathy she had had for Samantha was gone. It made you feel like plotting the most miserable, evil revenge you could possibly dream up. Something that could ruin Ted's life and tear apart two people who truly loved each other.
Her throat stung as tears welled up inside her. All Ted and I wanted was to be happy together. We had every right to be. Well, you don't have to get so dramatic about it, Samantha said. I was only trying to even the score. Amanda felt warm tears running down her face. Sam, I wonder if you've ever known what it's like to really love somebody, or if you'll ever know. I don't think you're capable of it. Samantha's shoulders slumped. You're wrong, Amanda. I loved someone. I love someone, and that person did something that hurt me very badly. She turned toward Amanda, and Amanda could see that her sister's lips were trembling. Was this another one of Samantha's poisonously good acting jobs? The person was my own twin sister, Samantha said. Amanda studied Samantha through a film of tears. She thought about Ted. No, she would never let Samantha twist her around her little finger again, no. She would harden herself to Samantha. No matter what her twin said, she would keep an icy distance. It's not the same, Amanda told her sister. I did what I did for love. You did what you did for spite and hate. That's the way you see it, Samantha said. The way I see it is that you hurt me and I hurt you. We're even. It's over. Now maybe we can go back to the way things were before. You must be mad to think things will ever be the same again, Amanda said. Samantha's face crumbled into a look of anguish. Amanda, listen. I know I said I wasn't talking to you, but how about if we call a truce? I'll forgive you if you forgive me. No, Amanda said. The word fell like a lead weight. Not until Ted and I are together again. Amanda, Samantha protested. Amanda turned her back on her twin without another word. Chapter 23. Bye! Watch for me up on the screen, Samantha said, giving her mother a huge hug and kiss. Next time you see me, I'll be a star. Amanda watched from the bedroom window as her father loaded Samantha's bags and her trunk into the car to take her to the train station. Hollywood. It was so far away and so different from staying at home in Detroit and beginning college in the fall, as Amanda was doing. She felt a twinge of regret as she watched Samantha climb into the open-top car. It seemed like a million years ago that her twin had been her best friend in the entire world. In fact, it had been only a couple of months. 2 months of wordless, tension-filled days, a potent, silent war in the Watson house. The early June sunlight streamed in through the open bedroom window. The perfume of flowers scented the air. Amanda's friends from the Claxon had invited her to picnic down by the lake, but she declined. It was hard for her to join in the spirit of carefree vacation days. All she could think about was Ted. All she could feel was Ted. It was better this way. Amanda could never forgive her sister, not so much for herself, though she was sure her heart would never mend, but Ted had lost everything. He had never returned to school after the arrest. He had sent a brief note to Harry asking him to send his belongings home to Chicago, but when Amanda had written to him there, her letters had been returned unopened. Harry had been equally unsuccessful at getting any further word from Ted. All Amanda could assume was that Ted's world had been so shattered that he had moved as far away as he could go, wanting nothing to do with her or even her brother, severing all contact with the family that had caused him so much pain. Down in the car, Samantha turned and looked up at Amanda. She gave a sad, tentative smile. Amanda stood motionless. She felt hard inside, a wall of hurt and anger separating her from her twin. Samantha touched her fingers to her lips and blew her sister a kiss. Amanda couldn't help feeling a lump in her throat, but she refused to cry. She spun on her heel and walked away from the window. She heard the car start. The 2 people she loved the most were gone from her life. Amanda lay on her bed trying to read, the hot July sun beating through the open window. It seemed as if she'd read the same page over a half-dozen times already. Her thoughts kept drifting, away from the book as memories of Ted played in her mind. Suddenly,
She heard the telephone ring in the foyer below her room. She jumped up and raced downstairs, trying not to get her hopes up. There wasn't really any way it could be Ted. Even after all the months since she had seen him, she could hear the sound of his rich, baritone voice in her mind. She grabbed the earpiece of the telephone. "Hello?" she said hopefully, speaking into the box attached to the wall. "Amanda!" Samantha's voice came through the bell-shaped receiver. "Sam!" Amanda felt a confusing mix of emotions wash over her. There was a sizzle of disappointment at it not being Ted, but there was also an unchecked little shimmer of warmth at hearing from her twin. Amanda had to remind herself that their days of being friends had been buried in front of the cafe car nearly 4 months before. But conveniently, Samantha seemed to have forgotten about that. "I've got the best news," she announced. "I wanted to be the first to tell you." "Oh?" Amanda asked coolly. "Amanda, I'm going to be starring in a new movie." Amanda felt a thrill go through her. Samantha? In a Hollywood picture? Then she thought of Ted and willed away any excitement. "Oh," she said flatly, "that's nice." On the other end of the line, Samantha drew in her breath. "You're still angry." Silence was Amanda's answer. "Please don't be," Samantha pleaded. "Amanda, you're my best friend, my other half. We can't spend the rest of our lives hating each other." Amanda swallowed hard. She did feel awfully lonely without Samantha, but the person she missed was the old Samantha, the one she had trusted, the one she had loved. She gripped the earpiece wordlessly. "Amanda, how long are you going to keep being so darned hard-boiled?" Samantha asked, her words colored with frustration. Amanda measured her answer carefully. "As long as I keep thinking about Ted, which means forever." Over the wire, Samantha sighed. "Listen, Amanda, I know it feels like you'll never get over Ted, but there are other men in the world, and one day soon you're going to meet one of them." "There aren't any other men. Not for me," Amanda said, her voice low but hard. All she had were her memories, memories that would stay alive forever, like the carved wooden rose her mother had given her. The flower had once belonged to her mother, Amanda's grandmother, Alice. For Grandma, it had held memories of her first love, an Englishman she'd met on her voyage to America but had never seen again once their ship had landed. For Amanda's mother, the rose was a remembrance of her twin sister, Elizabeth, who had died in a riding accident at the age of 17. For Amanda, the wooden flower would always remind her of Ted. She knew no one else would ever take his place in her heart. "You're wrong," Samantha said. "Believe me, I know. You think you're all alone and then, well, someone like Jack comes along." "Jack? Samantha murmured dreamily. "Jack Lewis. Oh, Amanda, I wish you could meet him. He's the most wonderful man in the entire world. He's a journalist. He's covering the Hollywood scene, and he's going to make me and my movie famous." Amanda bit her lip. Another journalist. It wasn't fair that Samantha should take Ted away from her and then find someone to make her forget the whole ugly episode. Samantha continued to rave about Jack Lewis. "He's incredibly handsome, and he loves me so much. Listen, Amanda, Ted's in the past. I promise you I'm completely over him, so you've got to forgive me. Say you will, please, Amanda." Samantha's words did exactly the opposite of what she was intending. Completely over Ted? That easily? Amanda felt her blood boiling. She would never get over Ted, ever. "You did this to me over someone you've forgotten about less than half a year later?" Amanda shouted into the telephone. "Don't call me again, Samantha. I don't ever want to see or talk to you again." She slammed the earpiece into its cradle. "It's what you wanted," Amanda reminded herself for the 100th time. "Sam invited you. She begged you to come. You refused." Amanda sat on the sofa in the Watsons' living room, a 2-month-old newspaper clipping in her lap. A photo of Samantha stared up at her. "Starlet from Detroit, married in Hollywood," the caption read. The paper usually favored the traditional hand-drawn sketches to illustrate their stories, but a budding star was clearly important enough for the most up-to-date technology. Accompanying the newspaper account was another photograph showing Amanda's parents and brother standing on either side of the bride and groom. Amanda studied the face, identical to her own, that radiated so much happiness. In the wedding picture, Samantha was gazing up at a tall, fair-haired man who looked as happy as she did. Amanda had to admit that he was awfully good-looking. Jack Lewis, Samantha's husband. Husband. She rolled the word around in her head. She couldn't get used to it. Not for Samantha. Though Amanda would never have admitted it to her twin, over the past few months she had followed Samantha's career through newspaper articles. She had carefully clipped the stories about Samantha's movie, which had garnered rave reviews from all the critics, and about her meteoric rise to fame. Often she had sat on her bed poring over the photos she had collected. Samantha at the Brown Derby, Samantha and Jack getting out of a limousine, Samantha with the movie mogul Samuel Goldwyn. Amanda looked at the wedding photo again and sighed. It was as if Amanda's twin was playing another form of their favorite childhood make-believe games. Make-believe you're a movie star, make-believe you're all grown up, make-believe you're married. Maybe if Amanda had been closer to Samantha during the half year she had been gone, it would have seemed more real to her. She would have heard about the first date, the courtship, the proposal. Had he sent her flowers and taken her out to the most romantic spot in Hollywood? What was he like? The grainy photos offered little clue. Amanda sighed again. The only other sound was the ticking of the tall grandfather clock at the other end of the living room. She felt overcome by sadness at what might have been. If things had gone differently, she and Samantha might have giggled over wedding plans, dreamed up the perfect honeymoon spot, chosen the most beautiful wedding dress. A bitter thought formed in Amanda's mind. If things had gone differently, they might have been choosing Amanda's wedding dress for her walk down the aisle with Ted. Of course, Samantha had done just fine with the dress on her own. In the wedding photo, she wore a sleeveless, straight-bodiced, embroidered gown that flared softly at the bottom into folds of gossamer silk. She had on a simple white cap with a fringe of gauzy veil and long white gloves. In her hand she carried a single white rose. Amanda felt restless, so she got up and went into the kitchen, where she put the tea kettle on and took down a canister of tea from the cupboard. Idly, she picked up that day's newspaper from the table and began to flip through it. About a third of the way through, she spied another picture of Samantha, this time in a dazzling beaded sheath. The accompanying article described the outfit in detail, giving the dressmaker's name and even Samantha's dress and glove sizes. But if the rumors going around Hollywood are right, the article went on, Miss Watson won't be fitting into her perfect size 6 dress for much longer. Amanda let out a loud gasp. Won't be fitting into her dress? Did that mean that Samantha was going to be a mother? Just then the tea kettle began to emit a piercing whistle, but Amanda ignored the boiling water. She reread the same sentence a half-dozen times. If the rumors are right, Samantha, her twin, with a child of her own? Was Amanda going to be an aunt? The photo in the newspaper smiled mutely. Could it be true? Amanda tried to imagine her sister cradling a tiny newborn, its downy tuft of hair as pale as its mother's and aunt's. Even the wall of anger and sadness that separated Amanda from her twin couldn't keep out a wave of joyful amazement. Chapter 24, 1927, somewhere in the western United States. Amanda's throat was raw from crying. Her cheeks and lips were chapped. Her head was cloudy from lack of sleep, and her body ached from so many days and nights of traveling. Hurry, she wailed the train. Hurry, hurry. Every minute of her trip seemed to stretch out into hours. The words of the doctor from California echoed in her head with the chugging of the train. The birth is going badly. Your sister has lost a lot of blood. She keeps asking for you. She might not make it, might not make it, might not make it. Couldn't the train go any faster? She had to get to Samantha. If only the Watsons had an airplane parked in front of their house instead of an automobile. But would even the fastest airplane do any good if the best doctors in Hollywood couldn't pull her twin out of danger? What if Amanda got there too late? Her parents had been visiting Harry at school when the word came. The three of them had left the day after Amanda and were now on their way to join her at the hospital. But what if Samantha was already... No, Amanda couldn't let herself think that way. She had to concentrate on positive thoughts. Samantha was going to get better. She was going to have a beautiful, healthy baby. She and Jack Lewis were going to be proud parents. She and Amanda were going to make peace and become as close as they had ever been. Amanda would take her niece or nephew to the zoo, read to the child, spoil him or her with presents. Samantha, Amanda whispered, I promise, I swear, that if you get better, we'll never fight with each other again. Please hear my thoughts, Sam. Once upon a time, she and Samantha had been so close that they could almost read each other's minds. There was a kind of silent communication between them, a bond that people who weren't twins couldn't possibly understand. Since reading the news of Samantha's pregnancy, Amanda had had time to reassess her own part in the destruction of that special bond, and she had come to realize that she had been very wrong not to have told her sister about Ted right from the start. She was as guilty as Samantha in betraying their unique relationship. Now Amanda hoped with every nerve in her body that Samantha could feel the love she was sending to her. I'm coming, Sam. I'm coming. We're going to be together once again. She was the first one off the train. She raced through the bustling station, skirting travelers, edging through crowds, and working her way toward the street. Excuse me, miss? A young woman in a blue cloche hat said, putting her hand on Amanda's sleeve and stopping her dash out of the station. Aren't you Samantha Watson? Her voice was breathy with excitement. Amanda pictured her twin lying in a hospital bed. She had to get to her, fast, now. She shook her head. I'm sorry to disappoint you, she said to Samantha's fan, but you're mistaken. She eased the girl's hand off her arm as gently as she could. Oh, but I know you are. I'd recognize you anywhere, the girl called after her. Amanda bit her lip as she found her way out to the street and hailed a taxi. She climbed into the closed auto and gave the driver the name of the hospital. Say, aren't you? No, Amanda said quickly, but I've been told I look like her. Now, if you please, I'm in a terrible hurry. The driver took one more look at her, shrugged, and stepped on the gas. Amanda could barely have said what Holly would look like from that ride to the hospital. Never in her 19 years had she been so far from home, yet the elegant mansions, the waving palm trees along the wide boulevards, the throngs of smartly dressed people all went by in a blur. The only thing Amanda could think about was Samantha. Be alive, she prayed silently, stuffing a large bill in the driver's hand as she ran toward the hospital entrance. Amanda burst through the hospital doors. Samantha Watson, she announced to the woman behind the reception desk. I'm here to see Samantha Watson. I'm her twin sister. Yes, of course. You look exactly like her, the woman said. Ma'am, it's an emergency, Amanda said, her voice rising frantically. An emergency? Why, everyone in Hollywood knows your sister is having a baby. My dear, women do it every day, even starlets, especially starlets. The receptionist chuckled as she consulted a list of names and room numbers. Yes, here she is, S. Watson. Isn't that something? A movie star right here in this hospital. She's in maternity, wing C, down the hall and to your right. Then take the stairs to the second floor and go to room 202. Betty, she called to a nurse standing in the lobby, did you know Samantha Watson has checked in here? That's her twin sister. Amanda heard her add as she hurried down the hall. Poor Samantha! All the fame in the world wasn't helping her right now. Her heart beating wildly, Amanda half stumbled, half ran toward room 202. Room 206, 204, 202. A uniformed hospital guard stood outside her sister's room. He looked at Amanda and did a double take. I'm her twin, Amanda explained. The guard nodded. Yes, they're expecting you. He put his hand on the doorknob. Amanda took a deep breath. Please be all right, she thought to herself. She stepped into the room. Amanda! Samantha's voice was a shadow of a whisper. Oh, Sam, Amanda breathed. Samantha's face was almost as white as the pillow in which it rested. Her lips were pale and her eyelids were heavy, half closed, but a smile played at the corners of her mouth, and in her arms was a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Sitting in a chair next to the bed, his arm outstretched and resting on Samantha's, was a man Amanda recognized from the wedding picture in the newspaper. On the other side of the bed were a doctor and a nurse, crisp in their hospital whites. "Sam!" Amanda could feel her tears forming as she rushed toward the bed. "Amanda," Sam whispered, "meet my daughter, Marjorie. Marjorie, your Aunt Amanda, my best friend in the whole world." Warm, salty tears streamed freely as Amanda gave Samantha the most gentle kiss. She reached out her hand and touched the baby's cheek. Marjorie, Samantha's daughter, Marjorie. She was so teeny, so soft. Her eyes were closed and she breathed lightly and evenly. "She's beautiful," Amanda said, trying to gulp back her sobs. Her sister looked more frail and weak than she could have ever imagined, but the baby was the most wondrous creature she had ever seen. "If you can stop crying for a second, I'll introduce you to my husband, too," Samantha managed to whisper. Amanda had to lean close to make out some of her words. "Shh, Sam, don't wear yourself out talking," Amanda said. She turned to face Jack Lewis. "Pleased to meet you," she said. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his face looked drawn. "Pleased to meet you, Amanda. I've always looked forward to meeting the twin sister Samantha talks so much about." He gave a smile, but his eyes were red, and Amanda could see he had been crying for a while, just as she had been. "Amanda," Samantha said, the syllables coming out in the faintest breaths, "I waited for you. I held on just for you." Amanda fought back more tears. "Held on? Nonsense, Sam. You're going to be fine. We're going to take Marjorie to the zoo, teach her all the games we played when we were little." Samantha shook her head. It looked like even that tiny motion was an enormous effort. "No, Amanda. I'm tired. I'm so tired." Her eyes closed as she spoke. "Shh, shh," murmured Jack Lewis, stroking Samantha's forehead. The doctor stepped forward. "I think your visit has gotten Miss Watson a little too excited. She needs to rest quietly." He gestured to the nurse, and she came over to take the sleeping baby from Samantha's arms. But as soon as she reached down for Marjorie, Samantha's eyes opened. "No, please, let me hold her. Don't take her away from me," she said. The nurse looked at the doctor. He nodded his permission. Samantha gave a ghost of a smile. "My Marjorie, my beautiful Marjorie," she cooed, her words growing weaker all the time. Then she looked up at Amanda. "Amanda, promise me." "Anything," Amanda said. "I'll promise you anything. Help Jack. Help him look after Marjorie. You'll be a better mother than I could have been, anyway." Her voice drifted off. Oh, Sam, please don't talk like that," Jack pleaded, echoing Amanda's most fervent thoughts. "You heard your sister. You're going to take our daughter to the zoo and play games with her. We're going to be the happiest family in the world. You'll see." Amanda could hear her sister's husband battling the tears that were flooding inside him. But if Samantha heard, she didn't answer. Her eyes closed, her head lolled to the side. Her arms, holding baby Marjorie, began to go limp. The nurse rushed forward and scooped up the newborn. Amanda felt a wave of panic swelling inside her as the doctor immediately took Samantha's wrist in his fingers. He looked at his watch, measuring her pulse. He shook his head. "No!" Samantha's voice bounced off the walls of the hospital room. "Sam, no!" she cried. "She's sleeping, that's all. She's just sleeping. Sam, wake up. Please, Sam. I'll wake up. I'll do anything. Just wake up, wake up." "I'm sorry," the doctor said. He put a hand on Amanda's shoulder. "Miss Watson, Mr. Lewis, I'm so sorry, but she's gone." No, it can't be true," Amanda heard herself yell. Her words collided with Jack Lewis's uncontrollable sobbing. Samantha, my love, oh Sam." And then a third mournful voice joined the grief, a high, heartbreaking wail. Baby Marjorie. The nurse held the tiny bundle out toward Jack. "Mr. Lewis," she said softly. But he could only shake his head, gulping in huge mouthfuls of air and crying so that his whole body shook. He slammed his eyes shut, as if he couldn't even look at his new daughter, the tiny baby who had cost Samantha her life. Through her own tears, Amanda reached out her shaking arms for the pink, swaddled infant. She felt the baby's warm, defenseless body through the blanket as the nurse placed her in her arms.
Shh, Amanda murmured. Shh, sweet Marjorie, don't cry. Let's neither of us cry. I'll love you enough for both Sam and me. I'll love you as much as Sam and I loved each other, deep down.
Chapter 25, 1935, Sweet Valley, California. No, Jack, you can't take her away, Amanda said. Jack Lewis sat at Amanda's kitchen table, his face buried in his hands.
Amanda, why do you have to make it so hard for me?
Amanda got a bottle of milk out of the icebox, then closed the door quickly so the ice would keep as long as possible. She shook the bottle to mix the cream into the milk, removed the piece of cloth that covered the stopper, opened the bottle, and added a little milk to the 2 cups of coffee she had poured. What did you expect me to do? Let you take Marjorie 5,000 miles away without batting an eyelash? She set the coffee down on the table.
Amanda, you've done everything for Marjorie. Don't think I don't know that, Jack said. Moving all the way from Detroit to finish school and take care of Marjorie at the same time, accepting a job here so we could all be near one another, being the parent whenever I had an assignment out of town. I know you're as much a mother to her as I am a father.
Then how can you do it? Amanda asked. France is so far away.
Jack sighed. Amanda, I've been offered a good job there, foreign correspondent. It's a dream come true. Besides, do you know how long it's been since I've had steady work?
Amanda bit her lip. Just the other day she'd seen a man she had gone to the university with selling apples on the street. Would the Depression ever end? Would there ever be jobs for everyone again?
And think what a wonderful experience it would be for Marjorie, Jack added.
Yes, I suppose it would be, Amanda said reluctantly. She wanted the world to be Marjorie's, and living abroad would certainly open up new avenues for her. But how could Amanda bear to lose her?
Amanda, what would you do if you were me? Jack asked.
Amanda fumbled with her coffee cup, picking it up and putting it down nervously without taking a sip. I'd like to tell you that I'd leave Marjorie here with me, she paused. But I know how much you love her. And you're her father. I'm just...
The most important woman in the world to her, Jack said, and I know I couldn't have raised her without you, but I need the work and I need Marjorie.
Amanda felt her chest tighten. What was the use in arguing with Jack? She was going to lose her niece, Samantha's daughter, and yet she knew it was the right thing. Jack Lewis was a good man and a good father, and Marjorie adored him.
Are you sure you won't reconsider coming with us? Jack asked. Can't I tempt you with fine perfumes and French fashions and charming little cafes?
Oh, Jack, it sounds wonderful, Amanda said, but this is my home. What would my students in Sweet Valley do without an English teacher? Besides, I'm awfully fortunate to have a job right now. She thought again about the man selling apples. You and I are the lucky ones.
That's true, Jack said. It seems that every day the bread lines are longer. But I'm going to worry about you all alone here. I wish I were leaving you with some tall, dark, and handsome friend to take care of you.
Tall, dark, and handsome. Amanda brushed away an image of Ted Wakefield. Even after all the years, it was still painful to think about him. I'll be just fine on my own, she said. Amanda felt the tears rise to her eyes. But promise me you won't keep Marjorie away too long. The banner stretched across the ballroom of the ocean liner read, Bon Voyage. A brass band belted out, I Got Rhythm. Men and women danced and sipped champagne. Amanda helped herself to a bite-sized puff pastry from the long table covered with plates of elegant finger foods. But as soon as it was in her hand, she realized she had no appetite.
Where is my little rascal? Jack asked, coming over with 2 glasses of sparkling water and handing one to Amanda.
Amanda pointed to the other end of the long banquet table. She hadn't let Marjorie out of her sight for a second, but holding Marjorie in her gaze was not going to do a bit of good when the ship set sail and Amanda was left behind on the docks of New York City. Amanda had always wanted to see the impossibly tall buildings and visit the fine museums, to feel the non-stop energy of this great city, especially since her brother Harry had moved here. But how was she going to be able to take in any of the sights when her heart would be sailing away with Marjorie? Now Amanda watched Marjorie filling a large plate with food. She worked her way toward Amanda and Jack, taking 2 or 3 of everything.
She certainly has an appetite, Jack said. Amanda watched Marjorie fill up every bit of space on her plate. Then she came over to where they stood. "Marjorie, my little princess," Jack said. "They're going to feed us every day on this voyage."
"Oh, Daddy," the 8-year-old said, as if she were the parent. "It's not for me. Didn't you see all those people living in those tar paper shacks down near the docks?" Amanda put a hand on Marjorie's shoulder. "Yes, that's one of the places called Hoovervilles. It's very sad, all those people living without proper homes, and you're a very wonderful girl for thinking about all the people suffering through these hard times. But Marjorie, you can't just steal the ship's food," she chided gently. Marjorie opened her blue-green eyes extra wide. "Aunt Amanda, who do you think needs it more? Him?" She pointed to a very, very large man, his fancy suit bursting at the buttons, who was heaping his plate with as much food as Marjorie's. Amanda swallowed a giggle. "Don't point, dear, it's not polite." She saw a smile pull at Jack's lips. Marjorie must have seen it too. She stubbornly moved her index finger toward a new victim. "Her?" she asked, indicating a tall, elegant lady with a fur stole wrapped around her shoulders.
Jack laughed. "Nah, she's probably on a diet."
Brashly, Marjorie helped herself to as many rolls as she could stuff into the pockets of her dress. Amanda shook her head. "You too. Marjorie, you are every bit as nervy as your mother was." "And as good-hearted as your aunt," Jack added. "Don't try to sweeten me up," Amanda said, trying to keep a straight face. "It's not right to steal food." "Aw, come on, Aunt Amanda. No one will miss it," Marjorie said. "And think how much those poor people out there will appreciate it. I'll bet they're hungry." Amanda knew they were the same people who waited on those long, long lines at the soup kitchen every day for a single bowl of watery soup and a slice of dry bread. "Oh, all right, dear. I'll look the other way just this once. But you'd better deliver that food in a hurry. The ship is sailing in less than an hour." "And taking you far, far away," she added silently. She watched Marjorie scurry off, her pockets bulging. "My baby, Sam's baby. I'll miss you." Chapter 26, 1939, Val-les-Deux, France. Dear Aunt Amanda, I wonder if you would recognize me. Daddy says I look and sound just like a French schoolgirl. I guess it's true, because no one at school knows I'm American until I tell them. But I still miss California, and hot dogs, and Coca-Cola, and you, even though Mademoiselle Pinjay takes good care of us. She's a wonderful cook, and she takes me shopping for all the latest French fashions. How are your classes at Sweet Valley High? What are the latest fads in America? Did you ever get to San Francisco to see the World's Fair? Lots and lots of kisses. Love, Marjorie. P.S. Don't be worried about me. Daddy says to tell you that the war is behind the border in Germany and that we are fine. My darling Marjorie, I have the photo you sent me in my pocketbook so I can look at it whenever I like. Your father is right. You do look like a beautiful French girl, very grown up with your pierced ears. One of my 9th graders, Walter Egbert, says he's going to duck into a telephone booth to put on his Superman costume and fly across the Atlantic to bring you back to Sweet Valley. Superman is the latest rage in the United States. He is a comic strip hero who has special powers, and all the boys in my class dream of being like him. The girls dream of being Scarlett O'Hara. Perhaps Gone with the Wind hasn't come out yet in France. Well, Scarlett O'Hara is a beautiful and clever Southern belle, but not as beautiful and clever as my darling niece. I do wish Walter Egbert could really bring you back to me. I miss you so and worry about you when I read the newspaper. I did get to the San Francisco World's Fair, and it was wonderful. I also saw the new Golden Gate Bridge, which was for me just as miraculous as all the exhibits at the fair. It seems to sail across the sky like some heavenly highway. I hope you will come home soon so we can make a trip together to see it. All my love, Aunt Amanda. Please send my fondest regards to your father.
Dear Amanda, you must try not to worry about us. I am not going to tell you that France at war is a pretty picture, but as American citizens, Marjorie and I are quite safe. Reporting firsthand from the very thick of the situation is the career opportunity of a lifetime for me, and I would be a fool to leave. Rest assured that at the first sign of danger, I will send Marjorie home immediately. As long as we are safe, I can't bear to be separated from her. She reminds me so much of Sam, and she is all I have in this foreign land. I know you will understand. All my best, Jack.
Chapter 27, 1940, Val-les-Deux, France.
Sieg Heil, the German soldiers shouted, raising their beer glasses. To victory, they laughed, translating their words into French as if to make their brutal point to anyone who might be listening. Marjorie flinched at the sound of her beautiful, fluid second language being roughened by the harsh accents of the soldiers. She pressed close to her father as they walked quickly past the cafe where the soldiers held court at 2 of the outdoor tables. The rest of the cafe was deserted except for Madame Hubert, the owner. Her round, wrinkled face was lowered. Her normally spry step slowed to a sad, humble shuffle as she carried frothy glasses of beer to the soldiers. "Where is everybody?" Marjorie asked, a wave of sadness and anger washing over her as she watched the soldiers laugh and drink, loud and confident in their crisp gray uniforms. The guns they carried gave them power over every man, woman, and child in Val-les-Deux. "They've stolen our town from us." "Yes, they have," her father said, hurrying Marjorie away from the cafe. "But, sweetheart, it's important to understand that the cafe is empty because the townspeople chose to leave. They didn't flee out of fear, but to show that they would not sit by and dine or drink with the enemy. It's their small way of fighting back, do you see?" Marjorie nodded solemnly, taking big strides to keep up with him as they made their way through the familiar streets of the town. Michel Bourget's parents gave the wrong directions to 2 soldiers who were looking for the train station the other day. I guess it's the same idea. Not too long before, Marjorie could have seen herself giving the wrong directions to a rival town soccer team as a practical joke. But the men in the gray uniforms had turned life in Val-les-Deux into a deadly, serious business. "Well, every effort helps, but the small things alone are not enough to win a war." Marjorie could hear the tight, fearful note in his voice. It made her cold all over. "Dad, I'm frightened," she said softly. She couldn't remember ever feeling this way before. She thought about the time she had been pulled under a huge wave at the beach back in Sweet Valley. She had felt her heart drumming wildly as she fought to get air. For a nightmarish moment, she had been sure she would never make it. But then she had pushed to the surface, gulping in huge breaths. Soon she was smiling and playing again, building a sandcastle by the water's edge with Aunt Amanda. Now, in the nearly deserted streets of Val-les-Deux, she felt a more subtle, lasting fear, one that seemed to grab icy hold of her deep inside, one that she could never shake free of. Maybe Aunt Amanda is right. Maybe it is too dangerous here. Her father stopped walking. He put his arms around Marjorie and wrapped her in a strong hug. "Do you want to go back to America? Do you want me to go?" Marjorie shrugged, burying her head against her father's strong chest. Their home in Sweet Valley seemed like a faraway dream. Val-les-Deux was her home now. How could she leave it? How could she abandon her friends and classmates to the enemy soldiers? Besides, her father's job was here. He wanted to stay. Still, she missed her aunt terribly, and she knew how much her aunt worried about her. Back at Aunt Amanda's, she would be safe. The balmy breezes of peaceful California would melt away her ice-cold fear. "You just say the word, Princess," her father said. "If you want to leave, you let me know. It's you and me. We're going to stick together. I promise. I'm not going to send my only little girl off on her own." Marjorie looked her father in the eye. This was the perfect opportunity to bring up something that had been on her mind a lot lately. "What about Madame Pinget?" she asked. "Dad, you might think I'm your little girl, but I'm not so little anymore. I've noticed how much time you spend with her. Are you falling in love?" Her father's laughter broke the tense stillness in the street. "With Madame Pinget?" "Yes," Marjorie said. "She's awfully pretty, and the 2 of you are always whispering about stuff, like you've got all these secrets." "Pumpkin, it's true that she is young and beautiful, and she is someone we can trust. That's important to know. We can trust her." Marjorie heard the weight he gave those words. "But as for me and Madame Pinget, she is my friend. That's all. It's just you and me." "I don't want to leave yet, Dad," she said firmly. She tucked her hand into his, frowning as they passed more soldiers in gray.
Chapter 28, 1941, Val-les-Deux, France. Through the living room window of their little stone house, Marjorie could see them talking. Her father's face was tense. Madame Pinget's gestures were fraught with urgency. Marjorie tried to listen through the door, but their words were muffled. She rummaged around in her book bag for her key. As soon as she put it in the lock, the talking stopped. The two adults were waiting for her, already looking in her direction as she poked her head into the living room. "Am I interrupting something?" she asked, hesitating at the doorway of the small, cozy room.
"Marjorie, we were just talking about you,"
her father said. "About me?" Marjorie put down her book bag and took off her coat. Underneath it, she wore her school uniform, a blue calf-length skirt and a white midi blouse with a red bow tied around the neckline.
"Princess, I've changed my mind," he said. "Your aunt is right. You're going home."
Marjorie noticed he hadn't said we. "And what about you?" she asked him.
"I'll be staying here," he answered.
His voice was gentle but firm. She knew his mind was made up. "But you said it was you and me," Marjorie protested. "You said we would stick together." She heard her voice rise in the small room.
"I know, Princess," he said, "but things have changed."
"Things? What things?" Marjorie felt a trickle of betrayal. He had promised. She saw him and Madame Pinget exchange a look.
"Pumpkin, you'll just have to trust me," he said. "One day you'll understand."
Marjorie felt her famous temper rising. "I think I understand right now. I think I understand that you two want to be alone and that I'm in the way. Isn't that right?" Madame Pinget shook her head, her neatly coiffed blonde curls bobbing back and forth. "Chérie, your father is a good man, but please believe that there is nothing romantic between us." Her delicate face colored as she said this. "Why do you both insist on treating me as if I were a baby?" Marjorie demanded. "I'm 15 years old. I see the looks you give each other. I hear you whispering. I know you meet after I go to sleep, when you think no one knows. Why don't you tell me the truth?"
"Sweetheart, we are telling you the truth," her father insisted.
"Then why do you want me to leave?"
"Marjorie, it's just too dangerous for you here."
He came over and put his arms around her. Marjorie shrugged them off. "Then it's too dangerous for you," she told him.
He sighed. "You're right. It is. But I have to stay anyway. I want you to know how hard I'm going to find it to be here without you. Pumpkin, you mean more to me than anyone or anything in this world."
Marjorie heard his voice crack. When he reached out again, she let him fold her into a hug. "Then why don't you let me stay?" she asked. "I want to stay. I could be brave, just like you." He hugged her even more tightly.
"I know you could be brave. You are brave."
"Then I can stay?"
He let Marjorie go. "No, Princess, you're going home. It's final."
There was an expression in his eyes that Marjorie had never seen before. She knew she wasn't going to be able to change his mind. Marjorie waited until Madame Pinget closed her front door. She stood outside and listened to her throw the catch from the inside, her shoes clicking against the clay tiles as she walked away from the door. Then Marjorie burst into tears, letting loose the flood she had been holding back all afternoon. She had walked up and down every street in town, trying to memorize each building, paying special attention to the feel of the smooth, worn cobblestones under her feet and the cozy narrowness of the streets, so different from California's spacious tree-lined boulevards. She had paused in the main square, taking in each cafe, each restaurant, each shop. She had breathed in the faint but not unpleasant odor of old, moist building stones that rode on the air of Val-les-Deux. It was the scent of many, many centuries, a smell one would never find in the young towns back in America, and Marjorie wanted to remember it forever. Then she had said goodbye to her friends, impulsively taking off her favorite butterfly earrings and giving them to her best friend, Martha Girardeau. Back when Marjorie had first arrived in France, Martha had convinced her to let her pierce her ears. She'd set Marjorie down at her kitchen table, numbed her earlobes with ice, and used a sterilized needle and a piece of thread to make the hole, all the while telling jokes about different boys at school to keep her distracted. Martha had been Marjorie's first friend in France, and she had stayed her best one. At school, it was always Martha and Marjorie, Marjorie and Martha. Marjorie and Martha had promised to write to each other and to visit as soon as the war was over, but Marjorie knew that a terrifying silent question loomed in both their minds. When the war was over, would a visit be possible? Who knew what might happen between now and then? Who knew what might happen if Germany won the war? Would Marjorie ever really see Martha again? She had swallowed back her fears and tried to stay brave. Madame Pinget's house had been Marjorie's last stop, and her hardest. Not even saying goodbye to Martha was as difficult. Madame Pinget had been the one to look after Marjorie when her father had to travel on assignment, the one to bring her soup when she was sick and read Marjorie her favorite stories out loud. If Marjorie knew every trick French women had for looking good, it was thanks to Madame Pinget. If she felt she belonged in Val-les-Deux, that was probably thanks to Madame Pinget too. As she moved away from the door of Madame Pinget's house, Marjorie couldn't contain her tears. She let them flow freely as she made her way along the familiar route home. Home. By this time the next day, she would have left it behind. Would it be swallowed up by the soldiers in gray? Would she ever see Val-les-Deux and the people she loved again? She didn't even dare to think too much about her father. He had promised to join her in California just as soon as he could, but would he be able to keep his promise? Marjorie felt scared and tired and old, as if she had lived many years in the past few weeks. As she wiped at the seemingly never-ending stream of tears, Marjorie saw a short man in dark clothes and a black beret coming down the street. As he got closer, she saw it was Michel Bourget's father. "Bonjour, Monsieur Bourget," she greeted him, sniffling back her sadness. This was the last day she would be saying bonjour to people in the street.
"Bonjour, mademoiselle," Michel's father replied. "Have you heard the news?"
His words were quick with excitement. "What news?" Marjorie asked.
"The United States has just entered the war. They are going to help us throw out the evil that has taken over France."
"They are? We are?" Marjorie exclaimed. "That's wonderful." She felt a swell of pride. Monsieur Bourget nodded eagerly, but suddenly the smile slipped off his face.
"You're Jack Lewis's daughter, aren't you? You're a classmate of my son Michel's."
Marjorie nodded.
"Then you are American."
"Yes." Wouldn't Monsieur Bourget be glad about that? Her country was helping his, but he looked scared.
"You're now the official enemy of the Germans," he said. "It's not safe for you here any longer. We'd better get you out of the open right away."
He took Marjorie by the arm.
"You live on the Rue de la Colline, don't you? We've got to get you home."
"Yes," Marjorie said. She felt her pride turning to fear as what Monsieur Bourget was telling her sank in. All of a sudden, her little Val-les-Deux was the enemy camp. If the German soldiers found her, she would be like a sheep among a pack of wolves. Had her father somehow sensed this was going to happen? Was that why he had decided so abruptly to send her back to America? Her father! Marjorie shuddered at a new thought. If she was in danger, so was he. She had to get home to warn him. She pulled on Monsieur Bourget's arm and began to run.
"Non, chérie," he said, holding her back. "If a soldier sees you running, he'll get suspicious. We must walk as if there is nothing wrong. If anyone stops us, you must pretend to be French.
Marjorie nodded, forcing herself to slow down to Michelle's father's pace. She felt as if she were walking in molasses. She wanted to sprint home and make sure her father was all right, to throw her arms around him and feel his solid, comforting presence. Marjorie felt Monsieur Berger stiffen beside her as they rounded a corner.
"Soldiers," he said, jutting his chin toward the two men at the end of the street. "Greet them politely as we pass," he whispered.
Marjorie's pulse raced. If Monsieur Berger hadn't been holding her arm, she probably would have turned and run as fast as she could.
"Keep calm," Monsieur Berger murmured. "You are just a normal French girl on her way home. There's no reason they should suspect a thing." "Bonjour, messieurs," he said, as they passed the two gray uniformed soldiers.
Marjorie pulled the corners of her mouth up. Sure, it looked more like a grimace than a smile. "Bonjour, messieurs," she echoed, her words coming out high and shaky in a voice she barely recognized.
"Guten Tag,"
the soldiers replied in their own language, nodding and passing by without incident. Marjorie's relief lasted until she got to her front door. It was thrown wide open, and she knew instantly that something was wrong. She broke away from Monsieur Berger and ran inside. It looked like a tornado had whipped through the house. The furniture was pushed out of place and turned over. The contents of drawers had been spilled out onto the floor. The curtains ripped off the windows. "Dad! Dad!" Marjorie yelled frantically. She raced through every room. Each one looked the same, their belongings strewn all over the place. "Dad, where are you? Dad!" But there was no answer. Monsieur Berger followed Marjorie through the vandalized house.
"Ma petite," he said, voicing the terrible truth she already knew inside. "Little one, your father is not here."
He put a thick, work-roughened hand on her shoulder.
"They must have come while you were out. Thank God they missed you, but I'm afraid your father was not so lucky. He could be a prisoner of the Germans."
Chapter 29. The night descended, extinguishing the cold light of the most frightening day of Marjorie's life. She huddled in the attic of the Bergers' house, her knees pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her knees, rocking numbly, her tears frozen deep inside her by fear. The blue daylight filtering through loose slats in the attic walls darkened until Marjorie felt like a shadow. The sound of footsteps coming up the narrow staircase shocked her out of her hollow stupor. Had her hiding place been discovered? Her pulse beat double time. "Marjorie, ma chérie," a familiar voice said softly. "Madame Pinjay!" Marjorie's fright melted into relief. A moment later, she found herself in the woman's arms. "Tell me it isn't true," she said. "Tell me Dad is all right." Madame Pinjay stroked her hair gently. "I wish I could. God, I wish I could. My poor Marjorie." They stayed locked in a sorrow-filled hug for a long time. "I've got to find him. You've got to help me find him," Marjorie said.
"Non, chérie," she replied. "You would only find yourself behind prison walls or barbed wire. No, you are in grave danger. I am going to take you to a hiding place where you will be safe."
"And I'll have to stay there while Dad needs my help?" A note of protest rose in Marjorie's voice.
"Shh, ma petite, shh," Madame Pinjay said. "The best thing you can do for your father is to save yourself. He thought you would be home in America by now, home and safe, but we'll have to do the best we can here. At least you'll have company."
"I will?" Marjorie asked. "Who?"
"A girl a few years younger than you," Madame Pinjay said. "But come, you'll meet her soon enough. It's not a good idea for you to stay here any longer. Monsieur Berger says some soldiers saw you with him this afternoon, and they may come looking for you. It's a small town. Word could get around. Now that it's dark out, we have to move quickly."
Marjorie knew she was right. There was nothing she could do for her father except hope with all her might that he would be all right. She let Madame Pinjay take her hand and lead her out of the attic. Something her father had once said to her echoed in her mind.
"Madame Pinjay is someone we can trust. That's important to know."
Madame Pinjay put a finger to her lips.
"We have to move as silently and as quickly as possible, yes? Monsieur Bourget wishes you luck, she whispered.
May I thank him and say goodbye?
Marjorie whispered back. She shook her head. He's with his wife and son in the kitchen. It's best if his family doesn't know you were here. In case anyone comes asking questions.
Marjorie breathed in sharply. It was like being in some kind of spy movie, except that this was perilously real. She followed Madame Pinget outside and around the back of the house. Every twig that snapped under their feet sounded to Marjorie like a gunshot. Every branch that waved in the evening breeze cast dangerous shadows on the ground. She almost didn't dare to breathe as she followed Madame Pinget through narrow back streets. A man's voice floated toward them from somewhere down the street. Quick, Madame Pinget whispered, gathering up her skirt and pressing herself into the shadows of a doorway. Marjorie did the same and crouched down next to her. She could hear the voice coming closer, talking about war rationing and how long it had been since he had had a nice, juicy steak for dinner. Another man's voice answered him. I know where you can get black market meat, Jean-Louis, conveniently borrowed from the supply the Germans keep for themselves. His voice grew louder, then faded as the men passed by. Madame Pinget remained motionless until there was silence again. Then she poked her head out and motioned to Marjorie that the coast was clear. They continued their wordless walk, the evening air growing chilly as they left town and wound down a path that led them through the woods and eventually alongside a large moonlit expanse of fields. Row upon row of jewel-like grapes grew in clusters on high trellises. They walked down a path through the vineyard. In the distance, Marjorie could see an old stone farmhouse. Closer by was some kind of outbuilding with several chimneys poking out of the roof. This was the building toward which they were headed. The air around the building was sharp with a funny odor. Marjorie breathed deeply, trying to place it. It smelled a bit like some of the old bars in town. Madame Pinget fitted a huge old skeleton key into the lock. The heavy wooden door opened onto a room full of large oak barrels and vats adorned with strange pipes and spigots. Marjorie could see them silhouetted in the silver-gray moonlight that stole in through the small, high windows. Of course, the wine from the vineyards was made here. No wonder the room smelled funny. Madame Pinget closed the door behind them and led Marjorie toward the rear of the room, darting between casks and wine presses. Another door, unlocked by another key, led down a damp, narrow staircase. As Madame Pinget closed the cellar door behind them, what little light there had been was blotted out. Marjorie felt her way down the stairs, sliding her hands along the cold stone wall. Sophie, Madame Pinget called softly. A spark accompanied the sound of a match being struck. A flame flared up, casting its flickery light on a young, blonde girl lighting a candle. It also illuminated rack upon rack of wine bottles against the walls. Marjorie was able to see her way down the rest of the stairs to where the blonde girl stood. She looked familiar. Marjorie thought she was a couple of grades below her, though it had been quite some time since she'd seen the girl around school. Sophie, this is Marjorie Lewis, Madame Pinget said. Marjorie Sophie Berg. They smiled shyly at each other. As Marjorie studied her in the dim candlelight, she thought back to the last time she had seen Sophie in school, and she suddenly realized why Sophie was in hiding. She was a Jew. When the Germans had invaded France in 1940, they made all the Jews wear a yellow six-pointed star on their clothes. Sophie had had to sew the star on her school uniform. That had been the first step in the enemy's murderous plan, to order anyone who was Jewish to wear a Star of David, as if branding a herd of cattle that had been rounded up. But Marjorie knew that it had gone way beyond a humiliating gesture. Jews were being sent off to labor camps, where they worked like slaves. Other, more horrible stories were beginning to filter back into France from camps with names like Dachau and Birkenau. No one knew what would become of the Jews who were shipped off. No wonder Sophie was in hiding. And as of tonight, this damp, musky room was Marjorie's home, too. Sophie lit another candle and stretched out on her thin straw mattress. Marjorie did the same, pulling her blanket up to her chin as if it might ease the chill of fear in her. My parents were taken away while I was having a flute lesson at my teacher's, Sophie said, her voice wavering ever so slightly. My mother never came to pick me up. Marjorie stretched her hand out to Sophie, and their fingers met. So what did you do? Marjorie asked gently. I was very, very lucky, Sophie responded, although I didn't feel lucky at the time. My flute teacher turned out to be a member of the resistance. He arranged for me to be hidden. The resistance? Marjorie asked. The people who are fighting for France, Sophie explained, pride coloring her words. They're fighting in secret, right under the nose of the enemy. My brother has joined up with them. You have a brother? Marjorie was glad Sophie wasn't all alone now that her parents were gone. Jock, he's 17, and he's the bravest boy in the whole world, Sophie said. What he's doing is terribly dangerous. He should be in hiding, too, but he's fighting for our country. He, my flute teacher, Madame Pinget, they're our real heroes. Madame Pinget, Marjorie asked. She's part of this resistance, too? In the soft flicker of candlelight, Sophie nodded. Yes, of course. Just bringing you here could have gotten her arrested. Arrested, like Dad, Marjorie thought. Suddenly all the whispering between Madame Pinget and her father made sense. It wasn't about romance. It was about something even more important. It was about justice and triumph over the enemy. Marjorie remembered her father saying that winning back France would take more than leaving a restaurant when the German soldiers came in or giving them wrong directions to the train station. Why, he must be part of the resistance too. Marjorie felt a tremor of pride. Her father was so brave, but she felt dreadfully frightened for him. What if the Germans found out he was not only an American, but also a part of the secret battle against them? Marjorie closed her eyes, blocking out the sight of the green wine bottles gleaming in the candlelight. The tears that had been trapped inside her all day welled up, stinging her eyes and nose. Lying in her secret bed, Marjorie wept. She heard Sophie get up, then felt her warm, thin arms go around her. It's okay. Go ahead and cry all you want, she said softly. I know how you feel. Marjorie let the younger girl hug away her sobs as if they'd switch places, and Sophie was the older one. Was it grief that had made Sophie grow up so quickly? How could a 12-year-old stay so steady when both her parents were gone? Marjorie swallowed the last of her tears and vowed to be as brave as Sophie. Chapter 30, 1942, Sweet Valley, California. It had become a bedtime ritual. Amanda opened the top drawer of her night table and took out the last photo Marjorie had sent her. It was worn around the edges from so much handling, and the shiny surface had cracked just above Marjorie's head. It was as if the sky was falling on her, Amanda thought, as if her universe had been split open, which wasn't, after all, that far from the truth. Amanda clutched her niece's picture to her heart, thinking about the last news she had received. A few months back, she had been correcting exams at her desk after school when a silver-haired gentleman had knocked on her classroom door. Miss Amanda Watson, he had said with a slight French accent. Amanda had stood up. Come in. What may I do for you? The gentleman had drawn close to Amanda and said, very softly, Miss Watson, I have news of your niece. Amanda's heart had skipped a beat. She is fine and is being safely hidden, the man said. She wishes you to know this and not to worry. Hidden? By whom? Amanda asked. Where? How do you know this? And what about her father, Jack? She searched the man's lightly lined face. Who are you? I am a friend of France, the man had said, as are the people who are helping your niece. I cannot tell you any more, and if anyone asks, I was never here. He turned on his heel and headed toward the door. No, wait, Amanda had called, stretching out her arm as if the mysterious Frenchman's presence in her classroom could magically bring Marjorie back to Sweet Valley. Don't go, please. Tell me more. The man had shaken his head.
I cannot. You must be brave. We all must be, he had said, vanishing through the wooden door. Amanda had never seen him again. Now, as she held Marjorie's picture, the visit seemed as strange and distant as a dream. Amanda prayed that the man's words were true and that Marjorie was safe. But even if his information was correct, how safe could she be, hidden deep within the boundaries of occupied France? Amanda thought about her students at Sweet Valley High, where Marjorie would have been in school if she'd been in California. In spite of several invasion panics that had hit the area in the past year, to most of her students, the war was far away, a faceless, shadowy evil, only barely more real to them than the villains in their comic books. Of course, they were patriotic. They collected scrap metal for the war effort, cans and broken machine parts. They collected war stamps and made posters in art class, encouraging people to buy war bonds. They wrote letters to the troops to keep up their morale. The boys in Amanda's class talked bravely of enlisting as soon as they turned 18. She knew some students in other classes had lost family members, soldiers not much older than they were who'd been killed overseas in battle. But the war hadn't touched most of her students. They did their best for their country, but life went on. The girls kept up with the latest styles and trends, wearing their carefully casual bobby socks, giggling about boys, and dreaming of being movie stars like Rita Hayworth. The boys traded baseball cards and practiced pitching curveballs and talked about Joe, the Yankee clipper, DiMaggio's latest home run, and their favorite girls at school. And Marjorie? Amanda ran her finger over the photo, pretending she was actually touching her niece's face. At best, Marjorie was hidden in some dank cellar or attic, never going to the movies, never having a Saturday night date, never walking on the beach and listening to the crash of waves on the sand. It was a jail sentence, one filled with uncertainty and fear, one that stole Marjorie's adolescence and plunged her into a bitter, grim world. Amanda kissed Marjorie's picture and prayed she would see her again.